Chapter 11. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Finally, Bai Ye and his death arrived at the imperial capital. As soon as the guards at the south gate saw his death, they immediately let them pass. Is it possible that these guards in the imperial capital did not know General death? Although they did not know Bai Ye, they could see that Bai Ye was traveling with General death, so they did not stop Bai Ye. Only 2 people came back. I remember that General death led thousands of people to attack. Could the rest of them be? I guess something unexpected happened. If it was just a special dangerous species, it would not be so miserable. But General death does not look like anything, and it is not our turn to worry. Watching Bai Ye and his death go away after entering the city gate, the gate guards whispered for a while. Entering the imperial capital, you can find that it is obviously much more prosperous than the previous Jisai city, but after all, it is the imperial capital. It would be funny if it is not as good as Jisai city. There is also the magnificent palace in the distance, where the emperor is. However, even in such a prosperous imperial capital, poor people can still be seen on the streets from time to time. Should it be said that it is an empire in the feudal era after all? And it seems that it is an empire that has fallen into corruption. General death, we have new dishes here today, General, remember to try them. I guarantee that you will be satisfied. Just then, the owner of a restaurant next to him shouted to his death. Yes, I will come when I am free. His death did not have any general's airs, but nodded to the owner very friendly. General death, our store happens to have a big discount, you can come and have a look. General death. Along the way, Bai Ye found that many shop owners on the street seemed to have a good relationship with his death and would take the initiative to greet his death. And his death did not have any airs. Now Bai Ye discovered another side of his death. She was indeed very friendly to these civilians, but she had no sympathy for those who were poor, abused, or persecuted. In other words, his death was friendly to her own people, but that didn't mean she really cared about these civilians. If a powerful person who did a lot of evil harmed these weak civilians, she wouldn't even look at them. To put it bluntly, in her opinion, it was right for the weak to be bullied by the strong could do whatever they wanted to the weak. She didn't harm these weak people just because she wasn't interested in doing that to her own people. If it was an enemy, then no matter whether the other party was old, young, sick, or disabled, his death would be extremely cruel. At this time, Bai Ye couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This woman's personality is really amazing. I have something to do and I have the minister arrange your identity and position. You can go around and get familiar with the imperial capital. If you encounter any trouble, report my name, but it's best to avoid it as much as possible. When they were about to reach the palace, his death said to Bai Ye. Okay. Bai Ye nodded slightly. He could also sell the dangerous materials he harvested on the road, because it was useless to keep them on him anyway. Afterwards, Bai Ye and his death separated temporarily. While walking around, Bai Ye found a shop that could trade dangerous materials. Young man, do you need anything? Or if you have any useless things, you can also give me an estimate. The owner of the shop immediately said to Bai Ye with a smile. These are all dangerous materials. Bai Ye directly put a batch of dangerous materials wrapped in cloth on the table. The owner was shocked when he saw this, because there were about a dozen kinds of materials. It seems that although this young man looks very young, he is very strong and can hunt so many dangerous species by himself. The boss suddenly had an idea. Such a high-quality customer must be won over. He deliberately offered a recycling price higher than the market price. Of course, he still did not lose money, but the recycling price was higher than other stores, and the profit was less. This price is just to make friends. Remember to come to our store when you need it in the future. The smile on the boss's face was brighter than before. Okay. Bai Ye accepted the bag of coins, put it in the inner pocket of his clothes, and then left. It was a bit troublesome to carry so many coins with him. He suddenly missed the developed electronic payment methods before he crossed over. The coins here are divided into gold coins, silver coins, and copper coins. The corresponding values of these 3 coins are, of course it is different. Bai Ye got all gold coins after selling those dangerous materials. If it was silver coins and copper coins, it would be even more troublesome, because the number would be multiplied by n times if the face value was small. Next, Bai Ye continued to stroll on the streets of the imperial capital. While getting familiar with the imperial capital, he also looked at the lives of ordinary people in this world. When Bai Ye was wandering aimlessly on the street, suddenly a carriage stopped beside him, and there were several guards accompanying the carriage. Bai Ye had been wandering on the street for so long and had a general understanding of the living conditions of ordinary people in this world. He judged at a glance that this should be a carriage of a wealthy family, because ordinary people simply did not have the conditions to own a carriage as a means of transportation, not to mention that there were guards accompanying them. In the carriage, there was indeed a girl who was obviously a noble, wearing a blue long skirt and golden curly hair. She looked very cute and had a slim figure. The accessories on her body were not luxury goods that ordinary people could have. Arya, however, Bai Ye didn't know what the carriage was doing beside him. At this time, he heard the voice of the blonde girl talking to the guard. "Miss, it started again. I can't help it. I just like it this way." The blonde girl got off the carriage and walked directly towards Bai Ye. "What do you want to talk to me about?" Bai Ye couldn't help asking. Are you from another place? You don't look like a local in our imperial capital." The blonde girl smiled cutely, and seemed to have a cheerful personality, with a cute light blush on her face. "Indeed, I just came to the imperial capital from another place." Bai Ye nodded slightly. He was not surprised that the other party saw that he was not a local in the imperial capital. After all, his clothes were different from others, and he looked aimless, as if he was lost. "Is there anything I can help you with? It seems that you are lost. If you don't have a place to live for the time being, why don't you stay at my house tonight?" That the blonde girl continued. "She looks very friendly and enthusiastic, and seems to be a kind and simple rich lady. P.S. The contract has been signed, and you can ask for gifts." Chapter 12. You are listening at novelfull.audio. No, I'm just wandering around. I won't get lost, but I don't have a place to live yet. Bai Ye replied. Then come to my house. My house is quite big and I can provide you with delicious food, the blonde girl said with a smile. Thank you for your kindness. I'll be very polite. Bai Ye did not refuse the blonde girl. Of course, this does not mean that he believed that the other party was really a kind, simple and lovely girl, but he just wanted to see what the life of the nobles in this world was like. The other party's unnecessary courtesy behavior, especially the stranger he didn't know at all, who knows if he might have any plans for him. Even if the other party had any bad intentions towards him, he was not afraid of it with the double power. He didn't know when his death would finish dealing with the matter. He couldn't wait for his death all the time, and he had to learn about this empire through various channels. Then it's decided. The blonde girl smiled and seemed to be very happy for helping others. But I have to go shopping later, so I won't be home until later. The blonde girl suddenly remembered this and told Bai Ye. It's okay, it's good to walk around, I also want to get familiar with the imperial capital. Bai Ye said indifferently. That's good, then you can sit in the car too. The blonde girl returned to the carriage. This carriage can normally seat 4 people. Bai Ye and the blonde girl sat face to face. Miss, is this appropriate? That the guard standing next to the carriage couldn't help but say. After all, Bai Ye looked like an ordinary person. Sitting in the same carriage with the young lady was not only inappropriate, but they would also worry about the young lady's safety. It's okay, you don't have to worry. The blonde girl said. Okay. The guards couldn't say anything else. They continued to escort the carriage and kept an eye on the situation in the carriage at all times. By the way, what's your name? My name is Arya. At this time, the blonde girl who called herself Arya said to Bai Ye. My name is Bai Ye. Bai Ye responded. Bai Ye, what a nice name. Arya praised. At this moment, Arya suddenly came in front of Bai Ye, very close to Bai Ye. Staring at Bai Ye's eyes, Bai Ye could almost feel Arya's breath, and he subconsciously leaned back a little. By the way, your eyes are very special, and they look very beautiful. Arya looked at the blood-red eyes, which had strange patterns in them. Really? Thank you. Bai Ye was a little surprised by this. However, What Arya was thinking at this time was that this country animal dared to have such a beautiful pair of eyes. She thought that after using sweet words to trick Bai Ye back home, she would dig out the eyes alive and keep them, and then torture him to death. Arya's appearance is completely different from her inner viciousness. Her cute smile easily makes people like her. Really, I wish I had such beautiful eyes. Arya said with certainty. Are you not satisfied with your eyes? Bai Ye asked immediately. In fact, he felt a little strange that a girl like Arya would think his Mangekyō Sharingan was beautiful. To him, these eyes were of course beautiful, but more because they were handsome and had powerful abilities. There should be only a few girls who would have the same idea, right? Well, I don't think my eyes are very beautiful, which has always troubled me. Arya nodded. I don't think they are ugly. It's better to say that they are as beautiful as sapphires. Bai Ye said frankly, he was speaking the truth. In his opinion, Arya's big watery eyes were beautiful, and her golden curly hair and blue eyes were also very good. He really couldn't feel that there was anything wrong with them. Do you really think so? Arya was a little surprised. Of course it's true. I think Miss Arya can be more confident about her beauty. Bai Ye nodded. Arya was silent for a while, and her stunned expression froze a little, because she was thinking of killing the other party with cruel means just now. At this moment her heart suddenly wavered a little, but it was only a little wavering, and soon her wavering subsided. Then Arya showed a lovely smile on her face again. That's right, I should be more confident, thank you Bai Ye. The carriage stopped at a shopping street. After Arya got off the carriage, she immediately walked quickly to a clothing store with great interest. Two of the guards hurriedly followed. Only Bai Ye and another guard were left on the carriage. Bai Ye had no consumption needs for the time being, so he did not follow. As for the other guard, of course, he stayed here to look after the carriage. The guard seemed to be bored, so he took the initiative to communicate with Bai Ye. Have you seen that palace? As an outsider, you should not know what our emperor is like. The guard raised his head and looked at the palace not far away. This is already in the imperial capital. The palace in the center is tightly surrounded by a tall wall. It is estimated that ordinary people are not qualified to pass through the wall. I would like to hear more about it. Bai Ye really didn't know what the emperor was like, and he just wanted to know these things. In fact, the emperor is still a child. It is not the emperor who is in charge of the entire empire, but the minister who manipulates the emperor behind the scenes. The guard said solemnly, he is the culprit who makes this empire so dark and corrupt, and the imperial capital is even darker. But you'd better not tell these things to others casually. Even if this is common sense in the imperial capital, if someone hears it, you will lose your head. After saying these things, the guard also reminded Bai Ye. Well, I understand. Bai Ye nodded slightly. Now I have learned very useful information, and the minister mentioned by this guard should be the minister mentioned by his death before. At the same time, Bai Ye felt that the guard seemed to be reminding something indirectly. If the imperial capital is very dark, then is the kind side of Arya, a noble lady, real? Although he hoped that he was just overthinking, he also kept more attention on Arya and was always alert to unexpected situations. At this moment, Arya had already come out of the clothing store, and she had nothing in her hands, but the two guards following her suffered, with several bags of things hanging on their hands and even their heads, obviously all clothes bought by Arya. At this time, Arya waved to Bai Ye with a cute and innocent smile and said, Bai Ye, come over too, and go shopping with me. P.S. The third update is finished, please give me some gifts. Chapter 13. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Okay. Bai Ye accepted Arya's invitation. Then let's go to that store next. Arya looked very cute with excitement, her eyes were shining. Miss, wait for us. The two guards put all the clothes Miss Arya bought on the side of the carriage, and then hurriedly chased after them. Bai Ye, do you want to buy anything? I can buy it for you. At this time, Arya asked Bai Ye. Not yet, let me take a look first. Bai Ye replied. Afterwards, Arya bought a lot of things every time she went to a store. The quantity was exaggerated. It seemed that she bought whatever she wanted, just like she came to purchase goods. Anyway, her family was very rich, but the two guards who were responsible for moving things suffered, and they were exhausted moving things back and forth. As a bystander, Bai Ye did not say anything, but he must have been shocked by Arya's exaggerated behavior. It seems that there is nothing I want to buy. Let me think about whether there is anything else to do. Arya thought for a moment and soon thought of it. Oh, right. Just do your hair at the end. Hair? Bai Ye asked immediately. Yes, I straighten my curly hair every once in a while, but it's a pity that natural curls can't be straight forever, which has always been a headache for me. Arya sighed. Don't you like natural curls? Bai Ye asked. Of course I don't like it. After all, it's so ugly. Can't you see it? Arya looked depressed, whether she was dissatisfied with her eyes before or dissatisfied with her natural curly hair now. It was her true side. She was even so real that she would easily kill others because of jealousy. In the original work, Tatsumi's childhood sweethearts Aias, also translated as Ayasu, and Saya, also translated as Xiaoya, were deceived by Arya and her parents. Ayas was infected with the Elbera virus in Arya's food by Arya's mother. Arya's mother had a habit of observing the conditions of Elbera patients and writing diaries. In the end, Ayas died of the disease. And Xiaoyu was just jealous of Arya because she had long and straight black hair, and then was tortured to death by Arya. However, Bai Ye didn't know this, otherwise he wouldn't have been with Arya until now. No, I really can't tell. I think Miss Arya's current hairstyle is already very good. Bai Ye said sincerely. You are just comforting me, but it does make me feel better. Arya didn't think Bai Ye was telling the truth, and in her eyes, outsiders from the countryside are no different from livestock, and she won't take what a livestock says too seriously. I'm telling the truth. How can blonde hair with natural curls be ugly? Bai Ye said bluntly. Miss Arya is still not confident enough about her beauty. She looks so cute. Although Arya treated Bai Ye as a domestic animal, in other words, a stinky outsider, she was still somewhat happy to be praised for her cuteness. Arya suddenly had no desire to torture and kill Bai Ye. She thought to herself, why not let this guy go? At this moment, Bai Ye suddenly felt a chilling cold gaze behind him. He subconsciously looked back and found that it was Esteth. Estetha's beautiful face was not only cold but also slightly gloomy. She seemed a little unhappy. I don't know who made her angry. Bai Ye, what's wrong? Arya asked when she found that Bai Ye suddenly looked back. Then she also saw Esteth, and happened to meet Estetha's icy eyes. Arya suddenly felt suffocated. She was frightened and quickly looked away. Of course, she recognized that the ice beauty with a proud figure was General Esteth, but she couldn't understand why General Esteth suddenly appeared here, and even looked at her with such a scary look. You are quite leisurely, being affectionate with other girls. At this time, Esteth came over and said to Bai Ye meaningfully. She had already obtained the imperial artifact suitable for her from the minister, which was the Ice Imperial Artifact Demon God Appearance Devil's Essence. The Imperial Artifact, such an extremely powerful special weapon, is naturally not something that anyone can use casually. It depends on the compatibility between the user and the Imperial Artifact. If the compatibility is not good, it cannot be used normally. For example, Estetha's Ice Imperial Artifact is made of the blood of a super dangerous species in the legendary Far North. It is made of ice and belongs to the blood type Imperial device. Before its death, some people tried to use this Imperial device, but they were driven crazy by the desire to kill after drinking only a little blood. Esteth not only suppressed this crazy Imperial device, but also drank the whole pot of blood and obtained the full power of this Imperial device, which seemed to be because her nature was very compatible with this Imperial device, that is, the desire to kill. The demon god appears. The essence of the devil was once called the strongest Imperial device, but in fact it was mainly because of Estetha's own strength and the mastery of this Imperial device. The mark on Estetha's chest at this time symbolized this Ice Imperial device. After mastering the Ice Imperial device and dealing with some things, Esteth came to find Bai Ye. She asked the soldiers patrolling the streets of the imperial capital and soon found Bai Ye, and saw the scene just now. The way Bai Ye went shopping with the blonde girl and walked so close to her made Esteth feel a little uncomfortable for some reason. No, I just went shopping with her and got familiar with the imperial capital. Bai Ye explained calmly. Arya realized that Bai Ye knew General Death, and they seemed to have a special relationship, otherwise General Death would not look at her with such a scary look. In this case, Bai Ye should not be an outsider. How could a stinking outsider have the opportunity to know General Death? But she didn't care whether Bai Ye was an outsider or not. General Death had already walked in front of her. Although he came for Bai Ye, she was also very scared. After all, she couldn't get away from it, because Death's oppression was too strong. Arya's body froze there and dared not move, and even breathing became difficult. No matter how rich her family was, it was just a wealthy merchant family after all, and could not face the pressure of General Death. P.S. This book seems to have a bug. I have signed the contract, but there is no button to send gifts under the button to urge for more updates. Also, I can't send chapter reviews. I mean chapter reviews, not paragraph reviews. I have to turn to the last page and click rush to the ranking now to send gifts. It's a bit embarrassing. Chapter 14. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Let's go, I've finished my business. After saying that, Death was about to take Bai Ye away. Well, where are we going next? Bai Ye asked immediately. I'll take you to get familiar with your future position first. When leaving, Death didn't even look at Arya next to him, although Death didn't quite know why she felt unhappy. In fact, it was because Death hadn't gotten it yet at that time, and she didn't have the concept of love in her mind at all. Later, she suddenly got it, and suddenly wanted to have a relationship, and her future relationship requirements are 5 in total. Pay attention to the future. Preferably aiming to become a general, brave, dare to go hunting dangerous species with her even with bare hands. Like her, he was born in the border area instead of the imperial capital, younger than her, because it's easier to control. It's best to have a pure smile. From Death's perspective, Bai Ye just happens to meet these requirements. The only flaw is the pure smile. Bai Ye only smiled from the heart once in Giselle City. That smile alone touched Death, but it was not love at first sight. But Death has no concept of love at present. It's just that in her perspective, Bai Ye coincidentally meets her future mate selection criteria, so even if she has a good impression of Bai Ye now, she doesn't realize what this feeling is. She only knows that she simply doesn't like the blonde girl. However, for Arya, being ignored by General Death is a relief. She was really scared just now, and her little face is still pale now. Seeing that General Death didn't do anything to her but left directly, Arya breathed a sigh of relief. Miss. Let's go quickly. At this time, the guard next to her reminded Arya in a low voice. The voice of the guard was also trembling. Who among them would not panic when seeing General Death? Arya nodded and quickly returned to the carriage. At the same time, the appearance of Death also attracted the attention of almost everyone around. Death is very popular in the imperial capital. Not only is she very beautiful, but her strength is also at the level of a general. At the same time, she is also the most people-friendly general in the entire empire, and she has a very good attitude towards ordinary people. That seems to be Miss Arya. I heard that her family is not normal. They like to deceive foreigners who have just arrived in the empire, and then lock them up and torture them after gaining their trust. I have also heard this rumor. It seems that Miss Arya wants to deceive a young man again this time. It turns out that the young man is someone General Death knows. I guess so. The young man must not be an ordinary person. Judging from his calm attitude during the conversation, he does not seem to be General Death's subordinate. The crazy nobleman almost got into trouble this time. While the people around were talking enthusiastically, Arya's carriage had already dragged a lot of newly bought goods back home. Miss, we really almost offended a great person this time. The guards were still deeply afraid of the appearance of General Death just now. As guards, of course they also knew the perverted bad taste of the eldest lady, the master, and the lady, but they never dared to have any opinions about this. They just worked for money, and they didn't want to lose their jobs or even their lives because of the so-called sense of justice. The only one who had a conscience was the guard who had talked to Bai Ye before. He reminded Bai Ye indirectly, but didn't dare to remind him too obviously. It was also this person in the original book. He took the opportunity to remind Tatsumi very obscurely during the conversation, but Tatsumi didn't notice it at all. It was because they knew that the eldest lady had that kind of perverted taste that they were so scared, if something really happened to the young man just now, they would definitely lose their lives. General Esteth was notorious for his cruelty. He looked like he was from another place before, but I didn't expect that he actually knew that crazy woman. At this time, Arya's face was gloomy, and she was not so cute. Anyway, Esteth was not around, so it was okay for her to call her crazy woman in private. Arya couldn't help but feel lucky that she hadn't started to attack Bai Ye yet, but she had just lost interest in torturing Bai Ye. Even if Esteth didn't show up, she didn't plan to do anything to Bai Ye. Anyway, this time it was a close call. While walking on the road, Esteth told Bai Ye about his next work. I have asked the minister, and there is no way for you to jump from an ordinary person to my deputy general. To put it bluntly, you lack merit. Esteth said, but I guess you won't be happy if you are an ordinary soldier first. So after discussing with the minister finally decided to arrange you to the Imperial Capital Guard. There is a lack of a deputy captain there. You can start as the deputy captain of the Imperial Capital Guard. It is already very good to have this position at the beginning. Even when she first came to the imperial capital, she was selected to become a formal soldier through various competitions with others, because the salary of soldiers is not low and the empire is in a period of corruption. It is impossible to support too many soldiers, so the threshold for joining the army has become more and more stringent in recent years. In other words, Esteth can make Bai Ye directly become a formal soldier, which is already a backdoor, not to mention the deputy captain of the Imperial Capital Guard, who has a much higher status than ordinary soldiers. This job is safe and comfortable. You only need to patrol the imperial capital and don't need to go out to fight. It's really good, thank you. Bai Ye can realize how hard it was for Esteth to get this job for him. After all, this is also your first position. With your ability and potential, I believe you will soon get enough merits to be promoted to general. Esteth encouraged Bai Ye. She hoped that Bai Ye could strive for the promotion to general. Well, I will work hard. Bai Ye also wanted to see a more comprehensive imperial capital and even the entire empire. If he could become a general, he would definitely see more comprehensively than a civilian, then he could know what he wanted to do in this world. But there is one thing I want to say first. Although you don't have to go on the expedition with me now, you are already my person. You can come to me if you have any problems. In addition, I don't want to see such things today again. At this moment, Esteth suddenly changed the subject, and she pinched Bai Ye's chin with her hand and gently raised it. Do you understand? Chapter 15. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Ye felt helpless when he heard the tone of Esteth's words that could not be refused. He could see that Esteth was a queen, and she had a strong desire to dominate. Didn't you say you would give me freedom? But you still care so much. While speaking, Bai Ye took a step back and broke free from Esteth's hand that was pinching his chin. He was not a masochist and was not interested in the feeling of being dominated. I'm talking about relative freedom, not absolute freedom. Esteth said in a cold tone, and do you know what the true face of that woman just now was? That woman? Are you talking about Arya? Bai Ye asked. It seemed that Esteth knew something, so he was a little curious. Yes, her name is indeed Arya. She is a habitual offender. She often tricks people who have just come to the imperial capital from the countryside into her home, and then tortures and kills them after satisfying their wishes. Esteth said lightly, although you should not be tortured and killed by such a shameful guy with your strength, you just need to know that she has no good intentions towards you. The things that Arya's family did were not unknown secrets, but ordinary outsiders did not know, so the victims were basically outsiders who had just come to the imperial capital. Esteth certainly knew those things, but she was never interested in caring about them. So that's it. Bai Ye nodded slightly. Although he was wary of Arya, he still didn't expect that Arya's cute appearance actually had such a vicious heart. Now thinking back, it was difficult for him to judge which of the things that Guy said to him were true, but it happened that he would be the deputy captain of the Imperial Capital Guard next, and he would have the opportunity to deal with this devilish nobleman. But there should be many people who know about this besides you. Has no one ever taken care of them? Bai Ye suddenly thought of this. From his perspective, this kind of thing is undoubtedly a very serious act, but the nobleman was not sanctioned, and it seems that no one even took care of him. If it is similar to the so-called power of capital, he can understand it, but this is just a rich nobleman, not a high-ranking official in the imperial capital. It is too serious for him to be so unscrupulous. It can only mean that, from the high-ranking officials to the guards in the empire, no one cares about the lives of outsiders at all. Not to mention outsiders, maybe even the locals in the imperial capital are not regarded as human beings. The degree of darkness in this empire seems to be more serious than he imagined. I don't know, and I don't have the interest and leisure to care about this kind of thing. Isdeth said bluntly. That's right, with your personality, you won't care about this kind of thing at all. Bai Ye sighed. Although he felt that his three views were not in line with Isdeth's three views, he would not force others to change their three views. The three views that Isdeth had formed over the past 20 years had already been fixed. How could they be changed at will? Oh. You sound like you know me very well. Isdeth was immediately interested in this. So what do you think my personality is? Tell me about it. Probably. Queen attributes. And then I have a deep concept of the law of the jungle. Bai Ye said truthfully. You've almost said it. Isdeth did not deny it. Is your belief in the law of the jungle so strong because of your childhood experience? Bai Ye couldn't help asking. Maybe. If my father and those tribesmen were strong enough, they wouldn't be killed by the northern foreigners. Isn't this a simple truth? Isdeth said in a matter-of-fact tone. But. Bai Ye wanted to refute, but after thinking about it, he gave up. But it's true. Although those northern ethnic groups are invaders, this is indeed a world where the strong prey on the weak. No matter how right the weak are, they can only be trampled in front of the strong. Just like the saying, if you fall behind, you will be beaten. If the entire country is destroyed, and even the people are gone, then it doesn't matter who is the righteous side and who is the evil side. What's more important is to make yourself stronger and turn yourself from a weak person into a strong person, whether it's the world before he crossed over or the world now. It's actually a world where the strong prey on the weak. There's nothing wrong with this principle, but Isdeth's understanding of this principle is too extreme, so there is still a problem. Sure enough, I agree with you. Isdeth thought Bai Ye had followed her ideas. Bai Ye did not respond, but continued to ask, then don't you hate those foreign ethnic groups in the north? Of course not. It is normal for the weak to be killed, but no matter whether they have done anything to my people, it does not affect my use of various means to kill them when I go out to fight. Isdeth said casually. Maybe your people are indeed weak, but they should not die. They are all innocent people, and it is not normal for them to be killed. Bai Ye said in a slightly deep tone. As soon as these words came out, Isdeth's face turned slightly cold. Bai Ye did not want to argue with Isdeth because of this matter, and continued, I am just expressing my own thoughts, without any other meaning, but I am a little curious. If my strength is stronger than yours, then as a weak person, what would you think? If this is the case, then you can kill me or make me do whatever you want, I will have no complaints. Isdeth smiled coldly. It's a pity that this is impossible. I will be the strongest in this empire. Isdeth's words are not conceited, but she is the most qualified to say this. She has just obtained the Ice Emperor, and she can foresee that she will have absolute strength. However, what was miscalculated was that Bai Ye in front of him was the most buggy traverser, and he could not be judged by common sense at all. That's hard to say. Bai Ye smiled lightly. He didn't have any strange ideas, but he thought that it would be quite troublesome to get along with Isdeth in the future, and the best way to solve the trouble was to have a stronger strength than Isdeth. However, at this moment, Isdeth suddenly changed the subject and raised her hand to touch Bai Ye's face. Can't you laugh? Why don't you smile more brightly? Not only did the topic change, the atmosphere was originally tense because of the two people's words and actions just now, but now the style suddenly changed, and there was no tension at all. P.S. The third update is finished, please give me some gifts. Chapter 16. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I was teased again. Feeling the cold and soft touch on his face, Bai Ye realized that Isdeth's hands were also so cold. He moved away Estetha's hand that was caressing his face in silence. If you want me to smile deliberately, I can't smile. But then, Bai Ye became more and more concerned about the changes in Estetha, not only the hands, he felt that Estetha's body was faintly emitting cold air. Although it was not easy to detect, he still felt it keenly. Before, Estetha didn't have this feeling, and the mark on Estetha's chest, Bai Ye had already discovered it, but he hadn't said anything about it. Speaking of the mark on your chest, it seems that you didn't have it before. At this time, Bai Ye couldn't help but ask, because he suspected that the changes in Estetha were related to this mark, or maybe this was the imperial tool that Estetha had just obtained. That's right, because this is the ice imperial artifact I got today. After drinking the pot of blood, this mark appeared. Estetha explained. Blood? So there are blood-type imperial artifacts. Bai Ye was slightly surprised. He thought that imperial artifacts were all kinds of weapons, such as knives, swords, guns, hammers, etc., but now blood-type imperial artifacts have appeared. This is also the first time I have seen this kind of blood-type imperial artifact, but the 48 imperial artifacts are so strange. You don't seem to know much about the various imperial artifacts. You can look for ancient books to check when you have time. If you encounter other imperial artifacts, you won't be caught off guard by unknown abilities. Estetha suggested. Well, I'll check it out when the time comes. Bai Ye nodded. His biggest problem now is that he has too little information about this world, and he knows nothing about the information about various imperial artifacts. Estetha is right, it is still necessary to understand those imperial artifacts. Even with the double godly powers, Bai Ye would not be careless. He could not be sure whether there was any imperial weapon that could restrain the double godly powers. At this time, Bai Ye had separated from Estetha and was about to report to the Imperial Capital Guard. Halfway through the journey, he suddenly heard someone calling him. Hey! Excuse me, are you Bai Ye? Hearing this, Bai Ye immediately turned his head and saw a girl with orange hair and orange eyes, a cute face, and a single ponytail. She was wearing a gray breastplate and shoulder armor, which was actually the uniform armor of the Imperial Capital Guard. Sayu, although the other person had a cute and friendly smile on his face. After experiencing what happened with Arya, Bai Ye would not easily believe others' appearance in a place like the Imperial Capital. That's right. Bai Ye nodded. Our Imperial Guard has received an order from General Estetha to send me to pick you up. The orange-haired girl immediately saluted Bai Ye and introduced herself. I am a new member of the Imperial Guard. My name is Celia Ubiquitous. However, at this time, Celia did not seem to have obtained the biological imperial weapon magic beast transformation, 100-armed giant, otherwise he would definitely bring Xiaobi with him at all times. I am also a new member, no need to be so polite. Bai Ye said. That's different, you are the deputy captain, and you are not at the same level as a newcomer like me. Celia corrected. Okay. Afterwards, Bai Ye and Celia went to the headquarters of the Imperial Guard together. On the way, Celia took the initiative to communicate with Bai Ye, and seemed quite lively and cheerful. Why did Vice Captain Bai Ye join the Imperial Guard? He must have a lofty ideal, right? Celia was curious about this. Since the Imperial Guard didn't know Bai Ye's specific background, they only knew that the minister arranged for Bai Ye to be the deputy captain. They all thought that Bai Ye was a talent that the minister and General Estetha valued very much. I don't have any lofty ideals. Bai Ye was a little embarrassed and didn't know how to answer for a while. He simply regarded this as a job that would help him understand the world. Really? Deputy Captain Bai Ye is just being modest, right? However, Sayu didn't believe it. I myself worked hard to join the Imperial Guard in order to enforce justice and eliminate all evil. At this time, Sayu talked about her ambitions. Her expression looked very serious, and her firm eyes were not joking. This is indeed a very lofty ideal. Bai Ye praised, but the premise is that the so-called justice in Sayu's mind is real justice, not distorted justice. However, Bai Ye didn't know this. After all, he just met Sai Lu. In his opinion, if she was really a girl with a strong sense of justice, then she could change the darkness of the imperial capital a little bit, which was a good thing, and he didn't know anything else. Is that so? Sai Lu smiled. as if she was happy that Vice Captain Bai Ye recognized her justice. Soon, Bai Ye and Sai Lu came to the headquarters of the Imperial Capital Guard. Vice Captain Bai Ye, we are here, Sai Lu said immediately. At this time, Bai Ye could see that the members of the guard were all wearing breastplates and shoulder armors. This set of armor was obviously the symbol of the Imperial Capital Guard. There was no complicated process next. Bai Ye came as a vice captain. If he had to say something, he probably needed to get to know the captain and other members of the guard, and Sai Lu assisted Bai Ye in this matter. Bai Ye suddenly felt that Sai Lu seemed to be a newcomer who did odd jobs. Vice Captain Bai Ye, I'll take you to see Captain Uka first. At this time, Sai Yu introduced the captain of the Imperial Capital Guard to Bai Ye. Captain Uka is very powerful, and his nickname is Demon Uka. He is feared by many criminals. If I have the strength of Captain Uka, I can better enforce justice, so I am trying to let Captain Uka accept me as an apprentice. Really? Then you should work hard. Bai Ye responded casually. After a while, Sai Yu had brought Bai Ye to the door of a room. Captain Uka is inside. Okay, thank you. Bai Ye said. Then he pushed the door open and saw a tall middle-aged man with a hideous scar on his left eye sitting inside, but he immediately noticed that the decoration of this room was a bit too luxurious. Can the captain of the Imperial Capital Guard be so luxurious? Captain Uka, this is Vice Captain Bai Ye. I have brought him here. Sai Yu saluted again, speaking respectfully. Very good. Uka nodded, signaling with his eyes that Sai Lu could go down. Vice Captain Bai Ye, although we don't know much about your situation, we know that you are not an ordinary person. Anyway, please take care of us in the future. Uka's tone to Bai Ye was very polite. After all, this young man was the one who asked General Esteth to speak in person, so he dared not act like a superior. Chapter 17. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Ye and Uka had a friendly exchange for a while, and nothing unpleasant happened. However, they had nothing to talk about, so they said some polite words and ended the conversation. After leaving Uka's room, Sai Lu took Bai Ye to continue meeting other team members. When Bai Ye and Sai Lu walked to a corner, some voices came from the invisible end of the corner. Is that fool Sai Lu still shouting about justice all day long? Yes, she has been like this since the first day she came. I remember she is almost 20 years old, but she is still so naive. She really doesn't know what our Imperial Capital Guard usually does, but it's true. She seems to be a new recruit from outside the city, and you have thrown all kinds of chores to her, so she is not qualified to do those interesting things with us. Hey, don't talk about such sensitive topics, be careful that the wall has ears. As these voices came, Sai Lu's footsteps obviously paused. Sai Lu. Bai Ye's tone was a little worried. I'm fine. Sai Lu raised his head firmly, with a slightly forced smile on his face. Bai Ye was silent. Sai Lu was average and a newcomer, so he was easily bullied by his colleagues in such a place. It was estimated that the things he had to do were also forced on Sai Lu by others. However, Bai Ye was also a little curious about what interesting things those guys were talking about, so he went over and asked, "What interesting things are you talking about just now?" Who? The team members turned their heads sharply when they heard the strange voice. As a result, they saw Sai Lu and a strange young man, but this strange young man made them feel a little familiar, as if they had just seen him somewhere. Among them, a hedgehog-headed team member was the first to react, remembering that the portrait was a bit like the young man in front of him, especially the eyes were very recognizable. And he was walking with Sai Lu, and if he was really an outsider, he couldn't easily enter their Imperial Guard headquarters. Then it should be the new Deputy Captain Bai Ye. Vice Captain Bai Ye, that the man immediately said respectfully to Bai Ye. On hearing this, the others reacted and saluted Bai Ye. As for Bai Ye's questioning of them just now, none of them dared to answer, but Bai Ye didn't plan to continue to question them. As for what the Imperial Capital Guard usually does, he would naturally know after staying for a while. Also, you seem to like bullying Sai Lu. Bai Ye continued to ask. Cold sweat broke out on the faces of those people. No. I haven't done such a thing. Some people shook their heads repeatedly, some people looked guilty and dared not admit it, nor did they dare to look at Bai Ye. It's better to really not. Bai Ye said lightly. Although Bai Ye didn't actually do anything to them, the deterrence was in place. They would definitely not dare to bully Sai Lu again in the future, even if they secretly said bad things in private. They would have to think twice. Realizing that Vice Captain Bai Ye was helping her, Sai Lu was immediately surprised and looked at Bai Ye with a surprised face. After being surprised, she was very grateful in her heart. After all, this was a rare person who treated her so well since she came to the imperial capital. Then, Bai Ye and Sai Lu left. Sai Lu prepared to take Bai Ye to familiarize herself with the entire headquarters according to the plan. At this moment, Sai Lu suddenly said, Vice Captain Bai Ye is a very gentle and good person. That's not really the case. I just think they went a little too far, so I reminded them. Bai Ye felt that his behavior just now was not a very gentle and good person. He could only say that he did what normal people would do. No, my intuition is very accurate. Vice Captain Bai Ye must be a very righteous good person. I should also learn from Vice Captain Bai Ye. Sai Lu said in a firm tone. Bai Ye found that Sai Lu's character seemed quite stubborn, so he immediately changed the subject. By the way, how did you and the others recognize me? Do you have my portrait so soon? That he was a little curious about this matter. The people of the Imperial Capital Guard met him for the first time, and the technology in this world had not yet developed to the point where cameras were available, but not only did Sai Lu recognize him at the beginning, but the team members just now could also recognize him. Yes, it's the portrait given to us by General Esteth, and it happens to be here with me now. Sai Lu replied. Really? Let me see it. Bai Ye was a little curious. Okay. Sai Lu immediately took out a portrait from his arms and handed it to Bai Ye. Bai Ye was shocked after seeing it, because the style of painting was too abstract. It could only be said that it was better than a child's graffiti, but the eyes were quite recognizable, with blood pupils and the rough pattern of double god power. Although this portrait was abstract, the facial features were somewhat similar, and coupled with the highly recognizable Mangekyō Sharingan, it was indeed not difficult to recognize him through this portrait. Who painted this portrait? Bai Ye couldn't help asking. He suspected that it was probably painted by Esteth. I don't know about this, I only know that General Esteth had someone bring it here. Sai Yu said. Okay. Bai Ye knew it in his heart. It should be Esteth's masterpiece. I didn't expect that a strong woman at the queen level would be so bad at drawing, but for such things, it's better to know it in your heart. After the Imperial Guard settled down, Bai Ye found Oka again to deal with Arya's noble family. There is a noble who cheats and kills outsiders. Does Captain Oka know? Bai Ye asked directly at this time. I know. Now that you mentioned it, I remembered that they haven't paid the protection fee this month. It's time to ask someone to urge them. Oka said this in a very calm tone. Bai Ye frowned. Protection money? You know they do such vicious things to innocent people, but you still protect them? What else? Who cares about the lives of those country bumpkins? We just need to make some money from them. Oka smiled and said, that nobleman pays us a lot of protection money every month to satisfy his own evil taste. Isn't that great? Bai Ye was silent for a moment, then suddenly stood up and said coldly, it's a pity. I will deal with them immediately. Oka was stunned when he heard this. He didn't react at first, and then he exclaimed, what? Are you kidding? I never joke like that. Leaving this sentence, Bai Ye left. After Bai Ye left, Oka's face became more gloomy. This kid didn't take him, Oka the devil, seriously at all. Chapter 18. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Although this guy might be a talent that the minister and General Esteth value, it is only a possibility. After getting to know him, he only felt that he was a young man who had just started out. For those useless outsiders, he got rid of the noble who could bring great benefits. Isn't this a hot-blooded fool? At this moment, Oka had already had the intention to kill Bai Ye. He was at least a local snake, and he was polite to Bai Ye just for the sake of General Esteth's face. As a result, the other party didn't take him seriously, which was simply shameless, so don't blame him for being rude. Oka had many ways to make a person disappear mysteriously. As the captain of the Imperial Capital Guard, he had done this kind of thing many times. and General Death often led his army to fight outside, and had no time to take care of the affairs of the imperial capital. In the end, this matter was left unresolved, and no one would do anything to him. In his opinion, General Death would not take this kid too seriously, so there would be no problem. Shortly after leaving Uka, Bai Ye happened to meet Seilu. "Vice Captain Bai Ye, you just went to Captain Uka, right? Is there any evil that needs to be judged?" Seilu's expression was a little excited. "I guess so. There is a noble who specializes in killing people who come to the imperial capital from other places." Bai Ye told Seilu about the evil deeds of the noble. "What a sin!" Seilu exclaimed immediately. She couldn't believe that such a thing would happen in a place like the imperial capital. Seilu then asked, "What did Captain Uka say? Do we want to judge the evil noble now?" "What he said is an attitude of shielding, because the noble regularly pays protection fees to the imperial capital guard," Bai Ye said. "How is this possible?" Seilu's reaction was incredible. In her mind, Captain Uka is merciless to evil criminals, and is the demon Uka that all evil people are afraid of. She couldn't believe that Captain Uka would do such a thing. In fact, Uka has always been like this, whether in the current timeline or the timeline of the original work, extorting ordinary vendors, sheltering nobles to collect protection fees, illegally making huge profits, and even framing an innocent ordinary person after the matter was exposed. These things are commonplace. However, Seilu has no contact with these things at all, and has no idea that Uka has such a side. In her eyes, Uka is the captain of justice, so much so that after Uka was assassinated by Night Raid, Seilu completely regarded Night Raid as the absolutely evil party, and launched a crazy revenge on Night Raid. Anyway, that's probably the case. "Next, I will deal with the noble myself," Bai Ye said lightly. "Wait a minute. I'll go talk to Captain Uka." "You must have a misunderstanding," Seilu said in an urgent tone. After that, she immediately ran to find Captain Uka. Just when Uka was thinking about the best way to kill Bai Ye, he suddenly heard an urgent knock on the door. He immediately retracted his thoughts and said in a deep voice, "Come in." Seilu immediately opened the door and walked in quickly, saying in a hurried tone, "Captain Uka, I have heard what Vice Captain Bai Ye said about the noble. I think there must be some misunderstanding between you. Captain Uka must also want to get rid of those evil guys." Hearing that it was this matter again, Uka was already a little impatient and scolded Seilu, "What are you kidding? Those people are specifically giving us money, and you have to be stupid to get rid of them." Seilu was stunned and couldn't believe that Captain Uka would have such an attitude. It is also because Seilu has not yet shown extraordinary talent, so Uka doesn't care about Seilu at all. The so-called extraordinary talent is that she can make the biological imperial weapon monster transformation 100-armed titan recognize her as her master. Later, she was named Xiaobi by her. Her normal form is similar to that of a puppy. After that, Seilu was valued by the imperial capital guard. She was originally deceived into being a test subject. To put it bluntly, she was not treated as a human being, because all the subjects of the Imperial Weapon Monster Transformation 100-armed Titan died except her. Later, Uka accepted Seilu as his apprentice, and did not let Seilu know the dirty things he did, becoming the so-called righteous master in Seilu's eyes. At present, Seilu is just an ordinary recruit, and is even regarded as a fool by many colleagues. Uka doesn't care. He was not afraid that Seilu would tell on him, because most of the civil and military officials in the imperial capital had long been corrupt and colluded with each other, and who would easily believe the words of such a little girl. At worst, he could just kill Seilu, let Bai Ye and Seilu disappear together. "Go away, before I get angry." At this time, Uka said to Seilu in a cold tone. The tone was like chasing a dog. At this time, Seilu lowered her head, opened her mouth slightly and wanted to say something, but stopped, and turned away from the room with a dead heart. Her steps were obviously very stiff, and it was obvious that what had just happened had caused a huge blow to her. However, Bai Ye had been leaning against the wall outside the door since the beginning, quietly listening to what happened in the room. When he saw Seilu come out, it was indeed almost what he expected. Bai Ye sighed slightly and prepared to turn around and leave to do business. He didn't say anything to Sai Lu, thinking about letting Sai Lu calm down first, but at this moment, Sai Lu suddenly rushed over, grabbed Bai Ye's shirt on his chest, lowered his head and couldn't help sobbing, tears falling uncontrollably. Why? I always thought Captain Uka was the executor of justice. Who knows, maybe this is human nature. Bai Ye was silent for a while and sighed slightly. Hearing Sai Lu crying, Bai Ye's eyes softened a little, and he couldn't help but touch Sai Lu's head gently. Although he and Sai Lu were not very familiar, at least in this Imperial Guard, only Sai Lu's attitude towards the noble was almost the same as his. However, Sai Lu quickly cheered up and wiped the tears from his face. I'm very sorry, Vice Captain Bai Ye embarrassed me. It's okay, I hope you can recover. Bai Ye smiled faintly. Please wait for me, Vice Captain Bai Ye. I will go back to the dormitory to get some equipment, and then I will go with you to expel the evil. Sai Lu immediately ran back to her dormitory, and then took a heavy sword that did not match her slender and delicate figure. P.S. The third update is finished, please give me some gifts. Chapter 19. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You use such a heavy sword as a weapon, it seems that you are quite strong. Seeing this, Bai Ye couldn't help but say. It's okay, after all, I have been practicing martial arts since I was a child, but I am still far behind Vice Captain Bai Ye. Sai laughed. She directly fixed the sword on her back, and she didn't seem to be struggling when she moved. Before officially starting the action, Bai Ye didn't forget to add a point to herself. System points, 24. The current system points are 24 points, all of which were obtained when hunting dangerous species before. Ding. The host exchanged physique *14, deducted system points *14. Ding. The host exchanged strength *5, deducted system points *5. Ding. The host exchanged agility *5, deducted system points *5. Bai Ye's allocation is still based on physique, the final three attributes are fixed here. Physique, 40. Strength, 27. Agility, 27. In terms of physical skills alone and not the dual divine power pupil skills, Bai Ye's current physical fitness is still not good enough. Because he found that the upper limit of physical fitness of people in this world is very high, not to mention the previous death, even the physical fitness of Sealiu exceeded the human limit of the world before he crossed over. Ordinary people may be weak, but the strong are really strong. Bai Ye asked someone casually and found out where Arya's family was. He had already been equipped with the chest armor and shoulder armor symbolizing the Imperial Guard. Passers-by knew at a glance that he and Sealiu were from the Imperial Guard. Some people took the initiative to offer courtesy, probably because they were blackmailed a lot in normal times, and taking the initiative could make the adults of the Imperial Guard happy. Bai Ye naturally refused. When he arrived at the place, he looked at the magnificent and luxurious palace in front of him. The picture in the original comic is so big that it can't fit in. It doesn't fit in with the ordinary buildings that can be seen everywhere on the street. It seems that the financial resources of this noble are more exaggerated than Bai Ye imagined. So big, Sai Lu, who was following beside him, exclaimed. This is a noble, it's amazing, no wonder Uka wants to protect him so much. Bai Ye said lightly. However, at this time, Sai Lu couldn't wait to execute justice. She took a step forward and split the door with a sword. Imperial Capital Guard, Sai Lu Ubiquista. At the destroyed gate, Sai Lu said fiercely, now in the name of justice, I will convict you of evil. For reference, the movement caused by Sai Lu immediately alarmed the entire palace, and the guards hired by this noble came out in full force. At this time, Bai Ye noticed that Sai Lu's facial features had become somewhat distorted, which was in stark contrast to the cute girl's appearance before, as if she had suddenly become a different person. He could even feel the murderous intent emerging from Sai Lu, which was somewhat creepy. Bai Ye immediately felt that it was not as expected. Sai Lu was indeed not as simple as she seemed on the surface. This world was really incredible. Imperial Capital Guard. When the guards gathered towards the gate, they also recognized that Sai Lu and Bai Ye beside her were both members of the Imperial Capital Guard. Go and inform the master. That they immediately realized that it might be because of the protection fee issue. but Sai Lu couldn't wait. She killed with both hands holding the big sword, and her skills were very agile. Don't think that Sai Lu is usually bullied by her colleagues in the Imperial Capital Guard, because only when she thinks she is executing justice will she show such a cruel side. In fact, even at her current state, in the Imperial Guard, apart from Bai Ye, only Captain Oka can surpass her in strength. But Sai Lu was immediately stopped by Bai Ye. Wait. Sai Lu stopped immediately. Facing Vice Captain Bai Ye, she was still very obedient even in this state. She looked back at Bai Ye in confusion. Bai Ye walked to Sai Lu's side and gently pressed one hand on Sai Lu's shoulder. Don't rush to do it before you have investigated the matter clearly. But Sai Lu subconsciously felt that evil should be immediately sentenced to death, but what Vice Captain Bai Ye said made sense, so she quickly lowered her head. Yes. The guards immediately felt a false alarm. They almost thought that this girl from the Imperial Guard was going to take action without explanation. Whether they could beat them or not was another matter. The key was that they did not dare to offend the Imperial Guard, otherwise the consequences would be very serious. Soon, the master appeared, that is, Arya's father. Arya of course, Leah and her mother also showed up. Arya's father looked kind and her mother was a beautiful woman with a lingering charm. Just looking at her appearance, she looked gentle and virtuous. If you only look at their appearance, it is difficult to associate this family with a perverted killer. But based on the information Bai Ye has learned so far, this family is very likely to have done those things. Bai Ye? Why are you here? Arya immediately recognized Bai Ye. Arya, do you know that adult? Arya's mother said in surprise. Well, I met him not long ago. Arya nodded. Excuse me, what are you two doing here this time? If it's about protection money, we will give it to you right now. Arya's father said to Bai Ye and Sai Yu. Protection money? It seems that you have confessed directly. Sai Lu's face suddenly became ferocious again. Vice Captain Bai Ye, can I convict them now? Not yet. Bai Ye tapped Sai Lu's forehead lightly with his hand knife. Sai Lu was knocked back to his original form, and his expression returned to normal. Bai Ye did not let Sai Lu take action directly because he felt that Sai Lu might kill these people on the spot. In contrast, it is more important to find out if there are any surviving victims at the moment. He wants these people to take him to where the victims are. According to the information he has learned, there are quite a few victims, and they are locked up. Arya and her mother immediately showed worried and frightened expressions, because the orange-haired girl next to Bai Ye just now looked murderous. At this time, Bai Ye did not want to say any more nonsense, and said to Arya's family directly, based on what you did, you will be arrested. Now take me to see the victims first. What victims? I don't understand what you are talking about. Cold sweat broke out on Arya's father's face, and his eyes were obviously a little erratic. Such a guilty look had betrayed him. Seeing these villains still quibbling, Yu suddenly felt itchy, and the sword in her hand could not help but tighten. She wanted to execute these villains immediately, but she had to obey the orders of Deputy Captain Bai Ye. Chapter 20. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you insist on quibbling, then we have no choice but to use coercive means. Bai Ye said in a cold tone. After Arya's father struggled, his eyes suddenly became fierce, as if he had made up his mind. He raised his hand to signal all the guards around him, and his face suddenly became ferocious and cruel, as if this was his true face, and the kind face was just an illusion. Everyone, kill them. With the master's order, all the guards surrounded Bai Ye and Sai Lu. Seeing this, Bai Ye's eyes gradually turned cold, and he shook his head slightly in disappointment. He no longer stopped Sai Lu, but reminded him, protect yourself, it's best not to get hurt. Yes. After responding to this, Sai Lu unscrupulously executed justice. Although those guards were much stronger than ordinary people, they were still no match for Sai Lu, who was selected by the Imperial Capital Guard. Sai Lu, holding a big sword, was like a man in a deserted place, and one head after another fell to the ground. Wait. We were just hired by them, they did all those things. Some guards collapsed directly, their weapons slipped from their hands, their legs were so weak that they could not help but kneel on the ground, and begged for mercy from Sai Lu with a horrified look. You are all accomplices. Once you are tainted with evil, you must die to atone for it. However, Seilu's face was cold and ruthless, and she would not show any mercy to those she considered evil. Since the day her parents were killed by bandits, she has hated evil extremely. Justice, execution. No matter how the guard cried and begged for mercy, Seilu swung down the sword in his hand without mercy. Now Bai Ye didn't need to do it. In just a short while, the group of guards were killed by Seilu and lost their fighting spirit. Arya and her parents were immediately terrified. The orange-haired girl's strength was so terrifying that she could kill the guards they hired alone. You have one more crime for attacking the guards. If you don't confess the truth, I may not stop her. Bai Ye said calmly. The she he mentioned was naturally Seiyu. At this time, most of the guards had been killed by Seiyu, and the rest were only a matter of time. It was estimated that they would be dealt with in a while. In the end, Seiyu's target must be Arya and her parents. After all, in her eyes, these three people were the greatest evil. Arya and her parents could also realize what would happen next. I admit it. I'll take you to that place now. Arya's father was so scared that he had to confess. Then let's go, lead the way now. Bai Ye said to them. At this time, the runaway Seiyu had dealt with the rest of the guards. She seemed to be unaware that Arya's family had compromised with Bai Ye, and she went straight to kill them with a big sword. Why doesn't she stop? Looking at Seiyu, who was killing at an alarming speed, Arya's father panicked. Arya and her mother were also scared and hugged each other. At this time, Bai Ye directly stopped Seiyu and grabbed Seiyu's wrist. Seiyu suddenly became more sober. Deputy Captain Bai Ye. There are still some uses for them. Bai Ye explained. Okay. Seiyu felt regretful and had to stop. Afterwards, Bai Ye and Seiyu followed Arya's family to a jungle outside the palace. There was a large house in the jungle, which looked like a warehouse, but after opening the door, they found that it was not as simple as a warehouse, but a place dedicated to torture and killing people. The warehouse was filled with various torture instruments, all kinds of horrible torture instruments, and some of them even had victims being tortured. There were also many people hanging upside down on the ceiling by hooks. Some were dead, some were dying, some were missing eyeballs, some were missing heads, and some were missing limbs. In addition, there were many people locked in iron cages on both sides. Their bodies had large areas of rot and redness, and they seemed to have suffered from some special disease, which was the Ebola virus that Arya's mother liked the most. The prototype was probably the Ebola virus. Seeing such a horrific scene, Bai Ye couldn't help but feel that Arya's family was really too crazy. On the other hand, Seiyu, a girl, had no reaction on her face, as if she was not afraid of such a horrifying scene at all. The only effect of this scene on her was probably to make her more determined to destroy all evil. Why did you do this to them? Bai Ye couldn't help but ask Arya's family. Arya's father the first to speak. What's the big deal? This group of country bumpkins are just a waste of food, just like livestock. It's up to us to kill or chop these livestock. That's right. Do we treat livestock as human beings? I like to use them to infect the Alberta virus, observe their daily conditions and write them in my diary. It's really an irresistible hobby. Arya's mother even talked about her perverted hobby with relish. Arya's heart was a little complicated. After all, she would never have thought that the young man she accidentally targeted that day would destroy their family, and some of the words the other party said to her that day, she still can't forget it. Arya's concept is actually similar to her father's. After all, she grew up in this environment since she was a child and was influenced by her parents. Vice Captain Bai Ye, can you convict them now? Seiyu asked with a grim face. In her opinion, the crimes of these three people are so serious that they are incurable. Let's hand them over to the court, and we can also settle accounts with Oka. Bai Ye kept them for a good reason, as they could directly serve as witnesses to expose Oka in court. If they died now, it would take more time to settle accounts with Oka. Moreover, the lynching of them by Seiyu was not supported by the law, so it could avoid some unnecessary troubles. After the court's verdict, Arya's father and mother were sentenced to death and beheaded in public, because they killed the most victims. Arya was second. She abused fewer victims, but the victims were all People she envied in some way, and she was eventually sentenced to life imprisonment. Bai Ye and Sayu also appeared in court, and they listened to the proceedings nearby. When Arya's family was taken away by the soldiers, they happened to pass by Bai Ye. At this moment, Arya suddenly asked him, "Were all the words you said to me that day true? Or were you just fooling me?" Bai Ye was distracted for a moment before realizing what Arya was referring to. He nodded and said, "It's the truth. Your eyes and hair are very beautiful. You are already very cute. There is no need to be jealous of others. Really. Thank you." When she was taken away, Arya still had a complicated smile on her lips.